Hey, what is up guys? I have been a Challenger player since set 3, and with the latest 13.14b patch, the meta has shifted a lot since the last one. Basically, in the last patch, if you guys remember, all these reroll comps were dominating the meta. Right now, I think some reroll comps are still good, but you can't really just hard force them anymore. The really good ones right now are going to be Noxus, Akshan, Vel'Koz, Taliyah, and Karma. I think the 4 costs actually feel pretty good. I think they're currently in the most balanced state since the beginning of set 9. I do think that the weakest one right now is Kai'Sa Yasuo, but even then with this comp, if you hit them 2-star, you could probably top 4. My personal strategy is I think if you have like a strong opener, strong early game items, you can just play your strongest board until level 7 or 8, and then roll down for a typical level 7 or 8 board like Azir, Yasuo, Aphelios, Sorcerers, or Bel'Veth. I think if you have a very bad opener like shit items, no upgraded units, you can probably just full open and then you roll down at 3-2. I really like rolling down for the Noxus board because this guarantees me to get like a 4th or a 5th, even if I have a terrible opener. In the S tier, Akshan, Aphelios, Piltover, Invokers, and Sorcerers are the best. And in the A tier, these are going to be very strong, but they're a little bit more inconsistent because it relies on you hitting very expensive units or relies on certain augments. It's just going to be Noxus, Shurima, Ionia Challengers, and the Bill Gates board. For Legends, I think that Ornn is the strongest right now, but not by a lot. I do think that some of the Ornn items are still very good. S tier being Eternal Winter and Trickster's Glass. A tier are going to be DFG, Gold Collector, TG, Infinity Force, and Death's Defiance. All the other ones are okay. They're not terrible, but they're still like usable. Poro is also very good. Again, Poro is always going to be good. Bard recently got nerfed. It used to give a 3 cost instead of a 2 cost in 13.13, but they fixed that. Now it gives a 2 cost. So before I think it was very strong, but now I'm not really too sure if it's as strong anymore. I haven't tried it yet, but I don't think it's as good personally. As always, Asol is good to push levels, and Vlad and Yi are always going to be good because they're triple combat. I updated what I think the strongest augments are, so check this out if you haven't yet. And without further ado, I'll get right into the comps. So the first comp on the list is just going to be Aphelios. So this comp, in my opinion, is probably the strongest and most consistent AD comp in the current meta. Only besides Bel'Veth, but Bel'Veth is not very that consistent because you need to get to level 9. You basically want to roll for this comp at level 8 if possible. The units you only care about are going to be Sejuani, Lissandra, Ashe, and Aphelios. All other units in this comp are going to be flex. So in this case, I'm just playing a Taric for 2 Targon, Shen for 2 Bastion, and then Scion for 2 Bruiser to complement the Sejuani. In this comp, you generally want to stack all of your tank items on your Sejuani, but let's say like you have this random 2-star Shen, but you don't hit the Sejuani, you can just stack the Shen instead. It's fine. Aphelios really enjoys Gwynsu's +2. The 2 other damage items are just going to be Deathblade and GS. Alternatively, you could also go Last Whisper, i.e. Last Whisper is not as good just because you already have the Shred from Freljord. You could also go 2 Gwynsu's, it's fine as well. Guardbreaker is decent as well. There is another variation you could roll down for as well if you don't hit this exact combination of units. In this case, you're just playing the 4 Deadeye variant where you're secondary carrying your Urgot. Urgot is a very strong secondary carry if you 2-star him, and if you have 3 items on him, he just jumps to their backline and kills off their team, and is a very insane tank, and then Aphelios just cleans up at the end. In this variation, you're just playing the additional Akshan and the Urgot. However, in this case, you do lack a little bit of frontline because you end up dropping the Shen and the Taric. Oh, sorry, Taric's still in here, but you end up dropping the Shen. But Urgot is pretty self-sufficient as a tank as well, as long as if you have 3 items on him. In the last variation, which is the Omega capped out board, you basically only want to play around 2 Deadeye, and you want to play around all the legendary units. So this is if you're able to push level 9 and you want to outcap your board, and you want to outcap your opponent boards. You basically want to play Heimer. Heimer is one of the best late game units in the game. Bel'Veth, if you get the chance and you hit a 2-star Bel'Veth, you can slowly move over the items from your Urgot onto your Bel'Veth. Bel'Veth really likes RFC +2, but you can see these 2 other items that are really good on Urgot are also pretty good on Bel'Veth. Other units you can play are going to be Senna, Cassante, and Scion as usual. Next comp on the list is just going to be Akshan reroll. This comp is very straightforward. It's very similar to Aphelios, but the typical level 7 board you want to play is just going to be this exact board. Basically, you're playing 3 Freljord and 3 Shurima. The Freljord is important for the effects of Freljord, and 3 Shurima basically buffs your single carry, which is going to be Akshan. You want to play towards this comp if you get an early Akshan. You could also play towards this comp if you're kind of broke and you want to roll for a comp at level 7. it's usually way easier for you to hit in Akshan 2 than in Aphelios 2. So this is a very good comp to play if you're playing from behind to just get you something like a 4th or a 5th. For this comp, basically you just play strongest board until level 7, and then you roll down for this exact board and you slow roll at level 7 until you hit 3-star Akshan. If you have a lot of money, you could go for the 3-star Lysandra as well. But honestly, Akshan is the only one that matters. Lysandra is a bonus. If you do hit the 3-star Lysandra though, then I would prioritize itemizing a Lysandra as well. So for itemization, Akshan really likes Deathblade, Runans +1. Right now, the best 3rd item is probably just going to be GS. But if you include the Orin item, the very best 3rd item for Akshan is going to be Gold Collector. And the second one is going to be Sniper's Focus. For Lysandra, she enjoys the same items as Kaisa primarily. Morello is quite good. Gunblade, Archangels, Deathcap, Guardbreaker is all very good on Lysandra. In this comp, you generally want to stack all of your tank items on the first 2-star you hit. It's probably going to be between Sejuani and Nasus. And then after you hit the 3-star Lysandra and or the 3-star Lysandra, you just push levels, go 8, and probably play something like a Heimerdinger. You probably swap this out for a Cassante, and then you play a second Bastion. So next comp is going to be Reroll Noxus. So I really like this comp because you could play this comp from ahead and behind. So obviously, like from ahead, if you get like a random Darius and like a 3 Noxus opener, you just play that opener, you win streak, you win like 4 or 5 of your early game rounds to farm these stacks, and you just snowball off of that. You roll down again at stage 3-2, you win all 3-2 to 4-5 because you have 6 Noxus in and 2-star Darius or Katarina, and then you go for 3-star Darius, Katarina, and you play for the win. The other scenario is like if you have like an absolute terrible opener, no upgrades, and your items are shit because you can't slam anything. Let's say if you have like Cloak, Glove, Belt, you can't really do anything with those items, so you just full open, get item priority, and pick whatever item you want. Generally, you go for Darius items, and then at stage 3-2, you roll down for 6 Noxus, and the idea is to win all of 3-2 to 4-5. And usually with those wins, you save enough HP to basically convert your 8th to like a 5th or a 4th. And in that spot, if you're lucky, you hit like a random Darius 3-star. You probably even play for top 2. That's why I like this comp. It's like a bail. It's like a bail you out of an 8th comp. But I do think that this comp is very augment dependent. You really need like combat augments for this comp to do well, and you need to hit your 3-star Darius and your Katarina. For itemization, Darius, like I think best in slot is not as important as you just slamming whatever you get. Generally, the items I really like to slam on Darius are going to be BT, Titans, Hodge, Last Whisper, IE, and GS. And you just throw all of your remaining AP items on Katarina to kill off all of your AP items. So Spark, Hodge, JG are all pretty good. And at level 7, you just throw in whatever unit to complement your main 3-star carry. So Darius, you just throw in a second Juggernaut, like Warwick. And Katarina, you just throw in a second Rogue, like a Echo. If you get a Noxus spat, you could just put it on either your Azir, your Nasus, or an Aatrox if you find one. So next up is Zeri. So for Zeri, she's another AZ comp. I would say that if you're playing this comp like completely standard, you're just rolling down for this comp at level 8, then this comp is going to be weaker than Aphelios. But if you're playing this comp from a Piltover opener, then this comp is going to be significantly stronger than the Aphelios because you have the T-Hex with like 50 billion stacks, and you have the potential to win out a lot of your lobbies. So generally, in the early game, I would really look out for units like Orianna, Vi, Echo, and Jace. If you get an Echo or Jace from an early game drop, I would almost always try my best to play towards the Piltover start just because the EV of winning your lobbies is so high. But if you only have an Orianna, probably just don't play around that route because it's very unlikely for you to hit. Basically, if you do hit the Piltover, your game plan is to full open, and then you probably could spike. You go 7 at 3-5, you slight roll at 3-6, and then you cash out there, and then you win all of 4-1 all the way until stage 5, and you go 8. That's the general game plan. If you're really greedy, you could roll down at stage 4-1 at level 7 to cash out instead. It's pretty important that you hit the 30 stack breakpoint because that's when your T-Hex upgrades and guarantees that you win most of your mid to late game fights. So in this comp, for itemization, Zeri really likes Last Whisper +2. The 2 items could be anything: Gwynsu's, Runans, IE, GS, Hodge. They're all pretty good on Zeri. All of your tank items go on your Sejuani, and then for Urgot, he really likes all of your AD/Bruiser-ish items. He's an amazing secondary carry in both Aphelios and Zeri. But generally, your level 7 board, when you're trying to cash out, is generally going to look something like this. When you're rolling down, you don't actually only want to be looking for Zeri. You want to be picking up all of the Aphelioses as well. Because what happens if you don't hit the Zeri and you hit like a random 2-star Aphelios, you could actually play a board like this instead, where you have 2 Gunner and 2 Deadeyes in, which also gives you the Freljord. You're primary carrying your Aphelios and your Ash. In this case, you also still have the Piltover that when you cash out, you push levels, and then at level 8, when you're rich enough, because you could probably transition out of this Aphelios and this Ash to play around the 4 Gunner board and play for highest cap. So if you're able to get to level 9, your highest cap board is generally going to look something like this. Basically, you're just playing around 4 Gunner, 4 Zon, and then the legendary units you splash in are going to be Heimer for the Vi, Senna for the 4th Gunner, and then Scion as your 2nd Bruiser. So next up is going to be the Bill Gates board. The Bill Gates board is basically a very capped board you could only play if you're able to get to level 9. It's pretty unlikely for you to get to this point unless you're playing ASOL. But sometimes you could also get to 9 if you're just high rolling extremely hard. Basically, the primary AD carry you want to play is going to be Bel'Veth, and the AP is going to be Ahri. Bel'Veth is good just as a standalone unit as long as you 2-star her and have the right items. Ahri kind of needs the 3 Ionia going and a blue buff. So basically all of the other units are going to be flex. So here is a sample level 9 board you can play. The best support units you can play are going to be Heimer and Senna, and Scion is probably going to be the best tank. And because you're already playing the Shen, you probably play a second Bastion like K'Sante. But honestly, K'Sante is like kind of underwhelming sometimes. If you 2-star K'Sante and you have like a Vow, you probably cheese a few fights by kicking off their primary damage dealer or tank in the front. But otherwise, maybe not the K'Sante, just play like a second Scion or like a Sejuani or something. So the first AP comp is going to be Invokers. So Invokers as a comp was never really a thing until the latest patch. I don't know what they did, but Invokers feels really good right now at level 7. Basically, if you have a decent front line and you have a 2-star Karma with 3 items, you usually you stabilize off this board very hard for a very cheap board. So for Karma, she really likes Gunblade JG +1. The 3rd item could be Guardbreaker, Hodge, Deathcap, Archangels, all pretty good. And you generally want all of your tank items on your Shen because he's going to be an Invoker that's a tank. The level 7 board I like to play is going to be a variation like this. Generally, Invokers lack a lot of frontline, so I like this more because you have a lot more frontline to deal with, or a lot of frontline to support your Karma, and Karma will have time to scale and kill off their backline. If you don't hit the 2-star Shen, you can just put all of your tank items on your set for now and then find the set later. So the other variation you could play involves something like this. Here you're just playing 6 Invoker. The problem with this is that if you don't find the 2-star Shen, your front line is very squishy. And a lot of the times you're just going to lose fights because even though you have the damage, your front line just dies before your Karma gets to do anything. The third variation you could play involves playing around 3 Demacia. You probably play around this if you hit like a lot of Jarvans, Garens, and then you play around the Galio and you put the 3rd Demacian item on your Jarvan to give you a lot more frontline. Itemization is the same thing. But in all 3 of these variations, they play in a very similar way where you have 2 options. You could either slow roll at level 7 for a 3-star Karma, very similar to Akshan, or you could just push levels and play 6 Invokers. So if you just happen to get a lot of Karmas on your level 7 roll down, hitting a 3-star Karma could be a potential out to top 2 your game. So you could just go for that play. If you're contested or you're very far off, you can just push levels. And the cool thing with Invokers is that you don't actually need a 3-star Karma to like top 3 your lobbies, because you could actually just play into a board like this. Here you're playing 6 Invoker, you secondary carry your Ahri, which is very strong in this comp because Invokers gives your entire team mana generation, and Rise is a pretty good 6 Invoker as well if you find him at level 8. This comp suffers from a lack of frontline, so make sure you have 2-star Taric, Shen, Lissandra, and Galio. This is really good if you get an Invoker +1. If you get the Invoker +1, you just put it on the Ahri and she casts super quickly and she wipes your whole board, and you have 2 of your carries and they'll eventually clean up. So next comp on the list that's AP is going to be Sorcs. So Sorcs without the Sorc +1 is actually pretty decent. You can top 4 a lot of games with it. Taric feels really strong right now in the current meta along with Lux. She's able to just instantly delete the first target she hits. I do think that if you don't have a Sorc +1, the level 7 roll down is a little sus, just because it's hard to fit in everything. But because if you look at this board, you kind of want the 3 Demacia, you kind of want the Jarvan, so it lets you get the 3rd Lux item and also gives you a bunch of frontline along with Strategists. So basically at level 7, you're forced to drop one of these units. You probably just drop like Sona or something, or the Jarvan, but if you look at what happens, your board just ends up like this, and it's it doesn't look as strong. So another variation you could play, if you don't want to play around 6 Sorks at level 7, is a board like this. Here you're just playing around 4 Sorks and you just have a shitload of frontline, which is what your comp kind of lacks. And you just carry the Lux, and then you use this to get to level 8 to play around 6 Sorks later. In this comp, you basically have two options. You either play around the Lux carry, or if you get a lot of Vel'Kozes, you could play around the Vel'Koz 3. So if you get the Vel'Koz 3, it's better to just put all the items on your Vel'Koz instead of the Lux, because a Vel'Koz 3 is going to be stronger than a Lux 2. Otherwise, it's more consistent to play around the Lux. Itemization, they both really like Shojin, JG, Gunblade. They honestly share a lot of the same items with each other, just Hodge, GS. DFG is also pretty good on Lux. It's the Ornn item. Basically, if you're playing Ornn, it synergizes very well with Lux's ability to instantly delete the first unit she kills, or instantly delete the first unit she hits. Generally, you stack all of your tank items on your Taric, just because Taric is very strong right now, and he's very easy to 2-star because he's a 3 cost. But the game opens up for Sorks if you get a Sork +1, because if you get a Sork +1 at level 8, you get to play a board like this. 8 Sorks is extremely powerful. Usually it wins you a lot of your games. And basically you just primary carry your Lux and your Ahri when you find her later. You put all of your tank items on your Taric and your J4. So next comp on the list is going to be Ionia Challengers. So this comp, I still think it's decent, but I do think that the 4 costs in this comp are on the weaker side if you compare it against the other 4 costs in the current meta. I think that this is not a comp that you should try to default to, but let's say like you're trying to play towards another comp, but you just get a lot of these Yasuos or like all these Kaisas. You could just feel free to play this comp, take your 4th and get the fuck out of there. You could also play this comp if you have an insane Ionia opener, like let's say like 2-star Aurelia, Warwick, 2-star Set, and like 2-star Samira. It's completely okay to play towards this comp and still take your 3rd or 4th. But basically at level 7, the board you want to roll down for is a board like this: 6 Challengers, 3 Ionia. You're stable off of 1 2-star Yasuo or a 2-star Kaisa. The Kaisa is pretty flexible. If you don't hit the Kaisa, you just stack the Callista. You could also play around like the Ionia variant where you stack the Karma instead. But Yasuo is like pretty non-negotiable because he's really the only person who could hold all of your AD items. You basically just play this board until level 8. And then at level 8, your board is probably going to look something like this. You just pivot into the 6 Ionia 4 Challenger variation. Itemization wise, Kaisa really needs Shojin +2. So it could be Shojin, Gunblade, Guardbreaker, JG is fine, Hodge is fine, Deathcap is also pretty good, Archangel is good, and Shiv is good as well. Yasuo is a bit flexible, more flexible-ish. You just stack all of your Bruiser or AD items on him. I really like him with BT or Edge of Night, one of those two, and you flex the other 2 AD items just to give him some survivability. So for example, BT Hodge IE, or you could go Edge of Night, GS, Hodge or something. Just slam wherever you get. 1 survivability item and 2 damage items is pretty good. One cool thing about this comp is this comp suddenly gets really good if you get an Ionia Spat, because with the Ionia Spat, it gives you the potential to play into Ionia Bel'Veth, which is probably the most broken item unit interaction in the entire game right now. Basically, if you get the Bel'Veth, you just play around the Bel'Veth, and oftentimes if you have like a 2-star frontline, 1-star Bel'Veth with Ionia Spat, you could just go 9 and then play around the Heimer and the Senna later. For Bel'Veth, if you get the Ionia Spat on her, she really likes RFC, QSS. GS is fine, BT is good, Hodge is good as well. IE is fine as well. Pretty much slam wherever you get. Whatever you get from the Late Game Carousel, just put it on the Bel'Veth. The final comp I'll be covering is going to be Azir. So Azir in the current meta, I think is good. It's just that you can't really play this comp from behind and roll for this comp at level 7, because what is going to happen is, because if you roll for this comp at level 7 and you're like 40 HP, there's a very high chance that you're not going to be able to stabilize at level 7 even if you go 0, because you're playing around 4 cost units and you need to hit a 2-star Azir or Lux and a 2-star Jarvan or Nasus, and this is going to be like a very expensive board for you to hit. So chances are like you're probably just gonna bot 4 if you're playing this from behind. I would only play this comp if I have like good items and I'm playing this from ahead. This way I'm able to go 8, roll, have some HP to spare, and I'll be able to hit Nasus, J4, Azir, and Lux, and then I'll have a very high cap and be able to top 2 or top 3. Itemization, I think the more I play this comp, I think Gwynsu's is very good on Azir. It's Gwynsu's +2. I used to think it was Shiv, but I think it's a little bit better to put the Spark on the Nasus and then just put 3 damage items on a Azir for highest damage cap. For Lux, just stick with 1 mana item, 1 damage item, and you get the 3rd Demacian item, or 3rd Radiant item from Demacia. At level 7, your board is going to be, you just drop the Teemo, but you probably don't want to play this comp if you're rolling at 7. So your level 8 board is just going to look like this. If you want to, for Nasus, you want to put all your tank items in your Nasus. It's really important to have all your tank items on Nasus. It's going to be better than putting it on J4, but if you're playing from behind and you just put it on the first 2 star you get, but Nasus preferably. To cap out your board, at level 9, you basically drop the Teemo and the Talia and you play around the legendaries, and your 3rd Shurima will just be a Cassante. So Cassante in for 3 Shurima, and then you just play Heimer for the turret, triple upgrade, and then you play the Senna. So there are a few other noteworthy comps that I did not include in this video, but I think they're still viable in the right spot. It's just that it's very rare for the conditions to happen to play the comp, and if I included every one of these, this would be like a 1-hour video. So I'll just briefly go over them. Double Trouble, the best comp you play is Talia. Ravenous Hunter, reroll Warwick. Riftwalker, reroll Kassadin. Both of the 1-cost reroll comps are still good if you get a lot of them. So for example, reroll Trist if you have a lot of Tristanas, Poppies, Maokais, Viegos, and it's a gold opener or Galaxy. Same thing for Kael as well. Void +1, you can play Vertical Void. You have the option to play for Rek'Sai 3 or Vel'Koz 3. But Rek'Sai 3 is the better variant in this case because it's a lot less contested. Shadow Owls +1, you play into Shadow Owl Kaisa, and then if you get an early Jinx and Robotic Arm, just play into reroll Jinx. But that basically sums up my flex guide for 13.14b. Again, if you guys enjoyed the video, would really appreciate the YouTube sub or the Twitch follow, and I'll see you guys next time.